Have a word of prayer. Lord God, thank you so much for giving us this time together, and bless us as we continue to explore different systems of belief. In the name of Christ we pray. Amen. Really briefly, we've looked at Christianity. Everybody knows what Christianity is, right? Yeah, vaguely. Well, that's pretty good. So we know something about Christianity. Judaism. I hear crickets in the background. Did you hear those crickets chirping in the background? Oh, yeah. We know about Judaism. We know about Islam, right?
Yeah, we hear a lot about Islam.
We hear a lot about Islam. Most of what we hear is bad, but not true, because Islam is just a system of beliefs. I was talking to somebody, in fact, today about it. We're having a conversation about, I was originally going to do at ALL a 2-hour thing on Islam for one of the classes, and this was appropriate. The liaison between the board and the university, new president at Franciscan, didn't feel that might be a wise thing to do for a Protestant to do a religion class. And I can certainly see his point. Well, that's their decision. I got no problem with it. But that's what I was going to do. Just what are some of the fundamental beliefs of Islam? Sort of what we did here. And I guess they may have been concerned that I could take it in different directions. Protestant, maybe that Islam is. I think their concern might have been more that I was going to present it as something horrible, damnable. This was going to be a terrible thing that would tarnish the university, would make the university. And they don't know me. He doesn't know me.
Yeah,
so
that's something John would do.
So, yeah, John would do. Yeah. So, you've already tarnished. John would tarnish the university. I'm a little tarnished anyway. So it's. Anyway, when I was talking to her on the phone, and we were sort of. She said, "Oh, well, you should have been able to do it." And it's not a big deal. We just do something else. I mean, it's an infinite number of things you can do. And I said, she said, well, people need to know the truth about Islam. And I said, I agree. Because to compare terrorists to Islam would be like the Crusaders to Christianity. Crusading knights burning down synagogues and slaughtering Muslim children. That's not Christian. As a Christian, I wouldn't say, oh, that's what my faith tells me. A terrorist, a Muslim is going to look at a terrorist and say, man, that's not what my religion tells me to be. Now, when you get into politics and stuff, now it's a little different, when animosity towards the West based on colonization for 500 years, there are different things going on. It's not just religious. But in terms of religion, the two don't necessarily fit together any more than crusading knights and Christianity. But we talked about Islam, and if you look at Islam, Judaism, and Christianity together, what do they have in common? What are some of the things they have in common? Okay, they all would say they're monotheists. A Jew and a Muslim would not say a Christian is a monotheist. That would be a problem. But the three together would say we have one God. We have one God. What else?
Abrahamic religion.
Okay, all of them trace their origins in some way to Abraham.
Which puts them in the same location.
Okay, geographic location. You got Christianity, Islam, Judaism, from that Middle East, coming in from there. One of the things we talked about last week when we looked at Hinduism, and I was talking to John about it before tonight. A couple of y'all that were in my office when we were hanging out. All three of those have a God that's distinct and personal. In fact, so distinct that we tend to, all three of those religions tend to ascribe to that God human characteristics. Even though we all know God doesn't have these human characteristics. And I was, just as I was thinking through, when I talk in a sermon about God holding our destiny in his hands, what am I doing? Saying God has hands. I'm making him human. And that tends to be what all three of those religions do, because God is intensely personal. He cares about people. God cares about creation. In fact, all of them have a creator God. That God is intimately involved. And sometimes he's pleased and loves in all three of these religions theologically. Sometimes he's ticked off and punishes, but there's a connection. There's a connection between this deity, single deity, and that which he made. Then we go further east into a whole different environment, and we looked at Hinduism, and how is Hinduism different than what we talked about with respect to Judaism, Islam, and Christianity.
What they believe is not personal.
What's that?
What they believe is that God is not personal.
It's not personal at all.
God
Not
doesn't love
at all.
multiple deities also.
Well, yes. And we were talking a little bit about that. One of the things, and Christians or people that have been influenced by Christianity have to be real careful, because I think we tend to Christianize other religions, which makes sense, because I want to understand Hinduism. And my only religious background is Christianity. So what do? I start comparing, and look for similarities. Lord have mercy. I do that with my dog. All the time. I do it with my dog all the time. I am assuming that my dog looks at the world like I look at the world. And so I talk to my dog like I'm talking to a person.
You're starting to look like each other.
Well, a little bit. Yeah, but she's the one that changed. You start talking about it. And in fact, today because she comes in every day, I was working on something, and she barks when she needs to go out. And she starts barking. And I look at her and say, wait a minute. Just wait a minute. I have to finish this. And she keeps on barking, and then I get mad. You didn't hear me. Wait a minute. But that's what we do. And we do it so we can understand it. And that's what we do with these Eastern religions. And the problem is, the whole concept is just radically different. So even when you start talking about God, that doesn't work when you're dealing with Hinduism. Because we have all these preconceptions about what God is. None of them apply to Hinduism, or the Hindu view of that which is above us. We're going to see it's even more dramatic when you start looking at Buddhism. But so if we're going to call it God, because I got no other word to use, how is the Hindu sense of God?
It's a spirit.
Okay, God could be a spirit.
Yeah.
Could be a spirit.
Is.
Okay, God is. Okay, Kenzie, God is energy.
Figure.
God is figure. God is what? Reason. God is thought. God is. I think God is. That's the best. God is. Does God care about? No, heck no. Because God is. God is. In fact, when you look at most of Hinduism, this God who isn't even a creator. This God didn't create, because that which is, has always been. It's not something that has a beginning and an end. That's a real Western idea. It always was, and always is, and always will be. That's what it is. And therefore, having a creation is kind of irrelevant. And even when we talk about, the Hindus have gods. Well, they're really not gods, because they aren't affiliated or associated with or manifestations of that which is beyond. They are just sort of like levels of what is. so you've got the devas that aren't creations of God, because nothing is a creation of God, nor are they reflections of that force. They are independent things that exist within our order. So it's such a radically different view of what God is. It's hard for us. And the more you know about Christianity or Western religions, the harder it is to grasp. It's easier if you don't know anything about it. If you have no background, because then, you're sort of starting from scratch. It's like we've got to step away from a lot of the assumptions that we immediately make. And it's not just religion, it's Western culture, which is a Christian culture. Western culture is Christian
Could
culture.
it be like a sign, the way scientists look at everything?
Well,
I mean, because the way science, they're looking at it basically the same way.
Not really.
yeah, not really. And that's what makes it, because scientists, even Western scientists, are influenced by this religion and philosophy that has become all intermingled. That's our culture. We're talking about a culture that's just different.
Or just don't care.
It's just different. It's not relevant. It's not there's no relevance. Okay, John, you said something earlier about Hinduism that I think is really very pertinent. What did you say when we
I
talked?
said it's a way of life, not a religion.
Okay, it seems that Hinduism seems to be a way of life, almost a lifestyle. What would speak to Hinduism being a lifestyle?
Well, because they accept their lot in life. They're at different levels, so they accept that because they believe by accepting their station now and having good karma, they believe in reincarnation. So when they come back, they're hoping to come back a step higher.
Okay.
So
And
it's not religion, it's just a way of life.
so when we talk about different ways that you can do that,
Right.
whether through livelihood or whether through a denial, self-denial, or whether through meditation or whether through reason, all of those would be ways to improve your existence today. Now, okay. And that so becomes a lifestyle. The question, and I don't know that it's a question that has an answer, just sort of throw out. Can you divorce that from the theology that enables you to get there? In other words, when you see God as not personal, therefore it's up to you to do it all. It's you. Now you'll have an infinite number of ways to do it, but it's up to you. Do you have does a personal God fit into that? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. Well, anyway, but that's what we looked at with Hinduism. We're going to look at another religion that comes from Hinduism. It comes from that same soil, but is going to come to some radically different conclusions, and is going to have a different view of God. And I'll tell you, every time I go through this, because I've done this several times, you see something different. And the idea of God is different in Buddhism than it will be in Hinduism. So part of the way they see God, and that's going to trickle down to a lot of the things the Buddhists teach. Okay? All right. So we're going to look at what Buddhists believe. Now, if we're talking about Buddhism, how would you describe Buddha? Describe for me Buddha.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
A fat little guy. Be real, Sandy, be careful. Because this gets really close to home. A fat little guy with a big belly.
With his legs crossed. Yeah.
With his legs, outside of his legs being crossed, that's me. You have described me. Okay, so thank you very much. If you had said bald or balding, you would have nailed it.
I wouldn't do that.
Okay, well thanks. Okay, So Buddha is a fat little man with his legs crossed. Oh man, I didn't think we'd go into this depth. All right.
I think it's even closer to a way of life because he has presented answers to different situations.
Okay.
How you should react to different things rather than
Okay.
like we would cry out for God's help. He gives you a way of solving it.
Okay. So Buddha has given Buddha, not Bubba. Which down south every family has a Bubba, but not every family has a Buddha. They have a Bubba, not a Buddha.
How do you know they
All right, yeah, maybe some Bubba's a Buddha. But so Buddha is a fat little guy with his legs crossed who tells us about life. That tells us about life. Okay. What else does Buddha do?
Peace.
Okay, it's peace. He's a peaceful guy. You know, unless you get in the way of his chicken leg, because that's.
Don't look like
That'd be bad. Or his chow mein. You know, he'll eat right through you. All right. But he's a peace lover.
He's pretty benevolent guy teaching you how to look for not necessarily personal enlightenment or spiritual enlightenment, but sort of like a way to deny enlightenment through denial. Or denying, earthly things.
Okay. Denying earthly things. Because when you talked about it, I was thinking of Keith Carradine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Which is it? David Carradine? David Carradine was Kung Fu.
Yeah.
David, because Keith was a nerd. Keith was in the nerd movie. Okay. John was a vampire. I got it.
Yes.
All right. So that's enlightenment. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So improving your life. All right. How now? That's how we see.
This is grasshopper?
Grasshopper.
Oh, okay.
Oh, so that's what you said.
Grasshopper.
That was
Grasshopper.
a Shaolin monk.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That's good.
I see. Praise to Buddha.
Oh, the king and I. Yeah, very good.
That was all
All right. So we've got this perception of Buddha, right? And since I know some of you are closet Buddhists, this is very good. In fact, most Buddhists would say, if you ask, that roll made, found in every Chinese restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. All right. How do you think Buddhists? Yeah.
Right next to the Kinnikinnicky cat,
Yeah, right.
there's always a Buddhist.
That's right. That's right. And that's where you put the penny.
Yes.
The penny tag right in front of it.
Right there, with this piece of bamboo, and the water, the Kinnikinnicky cat, and the Buddha. Yeah.
All right. How do you think Buddhists see Buddha? Don't know. Don't know. Okay. Buddha is a god. Okay. What's that? A fat little guy.
They're not blind.
As a spiritual leader. Okay.
Maybe he's almost like a Jesus type figure. He's not really divine.
Okay. Miranda's talking about a god because in that song the song that you referred to from The King and I, he is like a god. He's presented in that song like a god because they pray to Buddha and when Buddha turns the water into ice and then turns the ice into water again, they say praise Buddha. So they are in that song referring to Buddha like a god, and that was written by Buddhists, famous Buddhists, Rogers and Hammerstein.
Yeah.
So yeah, Hammerstein. Yeah. Oi, yeah, that's right. That's a little guy shaped like a matzah. You like that, so you really did. All right, so now, even in terms of, and by the way, when I say Buddha, y'all kind of zeroed in. Now understand, there are a lot of Buddhists. There's a lot of Buddhists. There's not one fat guy. There's been a lot of fat guys. Yeah, absolutely. Just, I almost said, take a look around, but I didn't say it because that doesn't apply to some. Now that's it, right?
That's what sounds really.
That's your Buddha. Yes.
Yeah. He looks pregnant. Big smile.
Yes. Clearly, he's not into self-denial. But of course, that's another Buddha. That's. Now understand, all of these are representation of the same person. So who he is and what he looked like is rather dynamic. Okay?
And this
so
is
that's
before and this is after the Friday exercise class.
well, that's exactly right.
Yes.
And that's what they did in the ancient world. They had a lot of before and after statues.
Yeah.
Yes. That's how you started, and then when you became a Buddhist, that's how you look. But if you take Buddhism too far, you end up like that.
Not looking too good.
Yeah. He's kind of passed out.
A little rigid.
Like he's in his grave or something.
Yeah. Well, he's not. He's reclining. He's a reclining Buddha.
Must be exhausted.
He's exhausted from all the exercise. But of the three, which looks happier?
The
Fat
first,
Yeah, the fat guy with the.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna look a little bit at Buddhism tonight, and like we've done the others, we're gonna look at the history. We're gonna look at fundamental beliefs, and we might actually be able to do that tonight, which is kind of cool because the history is it's a little different than what we've looked at other histories. Okay. If we're talking about history, and that says history up there, you can't see it. If you were Buddhist, you could. If you're thinking about the philosophical roots. Now, first, what is philosophy? When I say the word philosophy, just so that we're on the same page, what is philosophy?
Study.
What does the word mean?
To study.
Okay, it means to study. We know that it has to do with study because it's got that magic. Well, of course, philosophy doesn't have the ology in it, but it is a study. But philosophy comes from Greek, of course, because everything comes from Greek. The Greeks. What is it?
Study the language.
Well, it is a study. In fact, logy, well, in Greek is O-N-S. That's like logos, not ology. But that's the study of, word of. The end of philosophy is Sophia, your granddaughter. Sophia means,
Great.
what's that?
Great.
Bright, sure. Sophia means wisdom. That's what it means. Sophia, that's what wisdom means. So Sophia, that's in philosophy. So it has something to do with wisdom, right? But what is it at? So we got to look at philos. Well, good gracious, I'm just having deja vu all over again. We've talked about philos or filio before in different places. Do any of you remember what philos means? In fact, there's an American city that uses Philadelphia. And Philadelphia is called the city of brotherly love. Why is it called the city of brotherly love? Because it was Debbie doesn't know. Because it has the Greek word adelphos, which means brother. Delphia means brother, and philo or philos, which means well, it means love, but it means friend. That's right, brotherly love. Yeah. So philos means love but emotional love. Kind of a not agape, not active love, but sort of an emotional love. So philos, Philadelphia, city of brotherly love. So philos is love. So if I am a follower of philosophy, if I am a philosopher, I am what? A lover of
Wisdom.
wisdom. A philosopher is a lover of wisdom. Okay, that's what it means in Greek. That's what a philosopher is a lover of wisdom. So what does that mean? In practical terms, that's what the word means. But what is a philosopher? If I were a professional philosopher, if I had gotten my doctorate in philosophy, what would I be doing?
Working at Burger King.
I'd be working at a Burger King, or I might be selling insurance, maybe, or shoes in the mall.
I'm sorry, I went to school with a bunch of.
Yeah,
That's where they
no. If I were a philosopher, I would be spending all day
Legs crossed.
thinking about the meaning of life. Yes. Yes. Why? Why did I become a philosopher?
Why?
Yeah. So a philosopher is somebody who thinks.
Overthinks.
So a philosopher is someone who what would he do? What do philosophers do?
Well, that's what I said.
Think
it's
of
study
creation.
life.
Yeah, it's a study of life. It's how we can live. A good philosopher
How we
might.
got here.
Yeah, how we got here.
Answer all the questions.
Questions of life. Okay.
Like a tree make a sound and you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I've been known to say to a tree, now you stay right there, and let me finish. So that's what a philosopher. So it's the philosophical roots of Buddhism is in Hinduism, right? So it's coming out of the same root. And what are some of the fundamental things in Hinduism?
Not much.
Well, I mean, what just basic thing, vague God, concept of God. Yeah, reincarnation, kind of a wheel of life. What's that? Working towards goals in your life, and the goals can be different goals, right? Right. Okay.
Well, again, it's a docile.
Okay, kind of a docile, kind of an acceptance of wherever you are, because you come back, and hopefully you don't come back as a slug. You might come back as a dog, which would be a good thing.
You know, that
Well, oh yeah, that's right. If you're a bad slug, you come back as a preacher. John, you like that way too much. so anyway, so this is the roots in which, or this is the soil in which Buddhism is going to rise. And you've got a lot of different schools of Hinduism that believe in different things, and you have different goals in your life, and the different ways you reach the goal, and how you live is. Well, how do Hindus see like the soul? Yeah, what would be the Hindu soul? You're not going to say a fat man.
No.
Say, okay. Well, they would.
But they take it with them.
Yes, they kind of take it with them. They don't leave it behind. Yes, Hindus have a real strong sense of soul. In fact, that's what kind of true reality is that soul, which has sort of an eternal existence that comes back and back and back and back and back. That you may leave the physical behind, but it's the soul that continues, and it's the soul that really matters. And if you reach the highest level for the soul, then you join whatever this out there is. But the soul is kind of has an independent existence, certainly independent from the body. I'll tell you and this is just a little aside, there are Christians, or there's a group that would call themselves Christians, or the Orthodox Christians, we call them Christians, but that are called Christian Scientists. And Christian Scientists have some ideas. They have more to do with Gnostic, Gnosis, which is Greek word for knowledge. They have more to do with the old Gnostic ideas. But there's some real kind of similarities between Christian Scientists and Hindus, at least in terms of soul and the irrelevance of the physical world. So anyway, so that's the soil, the philosophical soil in which Buddhism is growing. the Buddha, on which Buddhism is based, is a real honest-to-goodness man called Siddhartha Gautama. Siddhartha Gautama. Now, have you ever heard Siddhartha Gautama? Okay. He lived around the 4th century BC. Okay, so when he was living, just to give kind of comparison, the Greeks were starting to develop their civilization, and they were worshiping Olympian gods. You know, Crete was coming. The Romans were running around acting silly in Italy. The Babylonians have conquered Jerusalem about the same time Siddhartha Gautama is born. You know, so the Jews are being taken into exile by the Babylonians. This is before the Persians, but after the Assyrians. Okay, so he's living in a real place, a real time. And Siddhartha Gautama is the son of a king. Siddhartha Gautama is the son of a king. And his king assumes he has raised his boy to be a king after, to follow in his footsteps. And to do that, what would be some ways you would, if you wanted your son, if you wanted young Ray to be a king, how would you raise him?
Strong rules.
Okay, would strong rules. Okay, good. Strong, that's really good. If I want to have strong rules to raise him, because I want him to learn how to be king, right? And I'm going to be really strong and really tough. Not like you really strong. Okay, really strong and really tough. What would you want? What would you do for? What would you want to practically? How would you go about doing that? Okay, you want him raised in your image, right? Because if
you're the king, you want him to be
okay, I want with strong rules. I want him to be like me, right? Well, okay, maybe if I'm a warrior, I want him to be a warrior, right? Okay, because I want him in my image, right? Now, if I'm going to create this young guy in my image, man, I want him to follow my footsteps, and the best way is for him to have the same size feet, right? Okay, so how am I going to do that?
surround him with people that the people around him as teachers have his
Okay.
same philosophy.
I am going to surround him with teachers that are going to teach him what I want him to learn, what I think he needs to learn, right? Which means I'm not going to let him do what?
Run around.
I don't want him to think for himself, Miranda. I don't want him to do what?
Run around.
I don't want him running around.
Yeah.
Because as soon as he starts running around, what's going to happen?
He's not going to learn. He's going to be corrupted.
Yeah, he's going to play basketball. He's going to play football. You know, he's going to be driving around, chasing girls. What's that? On his camel.
He might be getting
Right.
right.
Okay. And I will tell you something, under the Scouts of selling brooms, I will tell you and file this away to married people. Don't say when in a place where your wife is here that I put me down for a broom because Debbie needs a way to get around and she doesn't have to car. That does not go over.
That's on
That
the
doesn't-
broadcast.
Yeah, but she's going to listen to me. Zero chance that she's listening to this. I can say all kinds of things. I'd be saying, you know, unless a Nigerian is going to call her. So anyway, I don't want to isolate him, right? I don't want him running around. And that's what he did. He isolated Siddhartha Gautama. Wouldn't let him leave the castle. But as Siddhartha Gautama was growing up, he would notice people that either came into to the court or just looking over the castle walls, looking over the walls. He would see people living. And he noticed something about human life. What do you think Siddhartha Gautama noticed? It seemed to be a characteristic of people.
More than what he's learning.
Okay, yeah, they're different than what he's learning.
Yeah.
Although he can identify with them. You know, what does Siddhartha Gautama see? What do you think he sees that causes him to say, that's an interesting question?
Well, he sees it where they are. He sees their routines. He sees what affects them one way or the other, and how they react to things.
Okay, reaction, freedom, slaves, all of that's true. Within all of that, he sees that it didn't matter whether you were talking about slaves or the freest guy around, running around acting silly.
They both have the same.
He notices something similar in both. And in fact, he sees it in his own life. And he sees it in the life of his father and the people at court. What do you think he sees that unites all these people? This, by the way, very consistent with Hindu ideas.
Certain needs and desires.
Okay, that they have certain needs and desires. They also have an experience. Well, but even then, you know, the needs and desires of a slave is different than the needs and desires of a king, right? They both have needs and desires, which, file that away, that's really important. They both have needs and desires, but the situations are very, very different. But there's one thing where, whether you're a king or a slave, you have in common that are kind of related to these needs and desires. Well, you have life, but what is it in life that unites? They all, Siddhartha Gautama sees that they all are suffering. They all end up suffering in some way. They all suffer. Doesn't matter whether you're at the top or at the bottom. Nobody is happy all the time. Even if you're the king, you're not happy all the time. Even if you're a slave, you're not happy all the time. And Siddhartha Gautama wants to figure out, why is it that people seem to suffer? Why are they so stupid, unhappy? Well, you know, that's the question. He wants, and what you did is you offered an answer. So now, Siddhartha Gautama, this is something that he focuses on. This is what I've got to figure this out. What would be some ways you go about getting an answer? Now, you're a good Hindu, right? How are some ways you're going to find out the answer? Okay, you're gonna go to the people. Okay, so you go to the people, and why are you suffering? And the people say, I don't know.
No, because you're up there.
Yeah, okay, that's right. You go to your father. Why do you seem unhappy, Dad? You know. So he goes. Now I want some answers. If I have this pain right here, I want an answer for it, right? I got a pain on your kidney stone. What am I going to do to get my phone? Am I going to go to Chris?
Yeah, it's John.
Okay, I'm going to go to John. Oh, John, I got this pain right here.
I can't help.
You got no idea. All right.
Take two that set of
Well, you're in the
What's that? Hey, call me in the morning. Well, that's why I avoided Debbie, because,
Let the trip say it, knock it.
yeah, knock it right out. If it's a kidney stone.
Yeah.
But it ain't.
Well, you ain't going, you're going to
If I'm really concerned about that, the first time I had a kidney stone, do I think I would have been satisfied with that answer? Oh, I know it's a kidney stone. No, because I'm dying right now. You know, I am about to die, and I need to be talking to John Greco, not necessarily Debbie Seifert. I'm going to go, Sean kind of went through it. I want to go to people who what? Know what they're doing. You know, I don't want to, in fact, you went to one group and those people are supposed to know what they're doing, and you said, I'm not sure they do, and so you went to another group that knew what they were doing, and you got the treatment that you needed, right? That's what Siddhartha Gautama does. You know, he just doesn't go and just talk with folks that don't understand. He goes to who? He goes to priests, he goes to wise men, right? Philosophers who understand this. And they tell him, you know, why are people unhappy? Why are people suffering? And these wise men give him answers. And since they're all wise and wisdom exists, all of them give him the same answer, right? No. They all give him different answers on why people suffer. You know, why they suffer. And some of them say you suffer because your daily life stinks, right?
Yeah.
So go ahead and change your diet. Your diet stinks. What you need is a little bit of hamburger in your diet. They're hamburgers. They're not saying that. But your lifestyle's wrong. So Siddhartha Gautama says, okay, all right. So changes his lifestyle.
Doesn't change it.
Doesn't change it.
Because nobody's going to try to change it.
Well, he doesn't change it. So it goes to somebody else. And somebody else says what?
They might say it. I don't know.
Ask the guy. Well, I'll guarantee you, no wise man, just like no doctor, is going to say, I don't know what's wrong with you, because you don't go back. They're going to say, let me tell you what.
Let's try this.
What's that?
Let's try this.
Let's try this. And so he goes to these wise people. Why am I suffering? And some of them are telling him it's because you if you want to overcome your suffering, deny yourself. Just deny yourself. You know, because you're overindulging, and overindulging is horrible, bad. So deny yourself, and you'll feel better. And as everyone, and we all know, everyone who's been on a diet knows that once you start denying yourself, you're happy. Right? No, you're happier when you're that fat guy in the Chinese restaurant. Yeah. So he denies himself, and he notices people who are denying themselves all the time. They aren't better. They aren't happier. They just are hungry. You know, but they're not happier. You know, they're still suffering. So others say, well, what you need to do is you need to meditate. Really get into meditation. He's still suffering. And the people who are meditating all the time, you know, they're not any better. So none of what he tries works. None of what he tries reduces suffering. So what he ends up doing is he ends up sitting under this lotus tree, a bodhi tree, and he says, I am going to stay here until I figure it out. I am going to stay under this tree until I figure it out. And by legend, he has 5 friends with him, you know, who bring him stuff, so he's able to eat. He's not going to die under the tree, but he is going to spend his time focused on why people suffer. And as he does it, all of a sudden, as he's sitting there, and that's why if you see a lot of Buddhist statues, it'll have a lotus flower, because that's big. He's under a lotus tree, and boom, it comes true. I have figured it out. I know why people suffer. I know why they're suffering in the world, and it isn't because we're overindulgent. And it isn't because that's the Stoics, Greek philosophy. They said the same thing. You know, you need to face problems, with firmly. Give in, no matter how bad it gets. You face it. That'll make you strong. Well, it doesn't make you happy. You know, so that didn't make Epicureans, Greek philosophers, they were eating it, they were doing anything they wanted. You know, because that would make you happy, but they weren't happy. You know, people that were doing it. So it's not either of the extremes, it's something else. And all of a sudden, Siddhartha Gautama kind of gets it. And when he gets it, that's when, according to Buddhism, he becomes Buddha. He becomes Buddha. Because anyone who gets it becomes Buddha, becomes a Buddha. He is the Buddha because everything is grounded in his thought. So he's like the first, but he's not the only one. You know, when you finally figure it out, you become a Buddha. You become a wise, you become an enlightened person. Okay, now understand, all of this is happening in India, right? All of it happening in Hinduism. Now I'm not going to tell you yet what he ends up discovering. Now, understand, since it's all happening in India, there's a whole bunch of connections between Indian Hinduism and this new idea. Because remember, in Hinduism, there were different paths. You chose a path, and not everybody's path is the same, and you chose it. And so what Siddhartha Gautama is suggesting is there is a different path. But Siddhartha Gautama, as opposed to Hindus, are saying, there's one path. This is the path you need to take. Hindus are saying, boy, that's kind of narrow-minded. You know, because a whole bunch of paths. Yeah. And we'll talk about it in a little bit. He has some very definite views about God in this philosophy. So, but he says, so the Hindus get real upset with it. But there's a lot of overlap. Now, are there a lot of Buddhists do you think there's a lot of Buddhists in India? No. There's almost no Buddhists. If you wanted to find a Buddhist, other than going to an airport, where might you find a Buddhist?
Nepal.
You find it in Nepal. What's that? Southeast Asia, Vietnam, you know, Thailand, you know, King and I, you know, he's Buddhist. That's a Buddhist king in Thailand.
You find them in America.
Okay, you find a lot in America. Find a lot of Buddhists in Cambodia. Find a lot of Buddhists in Nepal. You know, the Dalai Lama. That's these Buddhists. China, Buddhists in China. You know, Japan. You know what they call? That's Zen Buddhism. Is a Japanese school of Buddhism. So you find it in Asia, but you don't find it in. You don't find it in Steubenville. Now, why is it not in Steubenville? I don't know. I don't understand why either. You know, although, which is odd, because I've seen a lot of fat little men in Steubenville. You know, you think that people are Buddhists. You know, they're everywhere. You know.
Like a Hare Krishna Buddhist?
Yeah.
Hare Krishna, are they Buddhists?
Hare Krishna is
Down
Buddhist.
in Moundsville. Or
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so but you don't have it in India. Now, the reason Buddhism, even though Buddhism is growing out of this Hindu soil, the reason it's not really focused in India is because of another king named Asoka, who is an Indian emperor, one of the Gupta emperors, when India was a powerhouse. And he Hindu king converts to Buddhism. And he starts following what Siddhartha Gautama taught. Now, what's really fascinating with Asoka is he was a warrior king. I mean, he was a bad man. You know, wore leather jackets, had long hair, he was one of the worst. You know, one of the worst. Sometimes, and people don't know this, but I've read, he sometimes dressed up a pirate. You know, he really did. And you know why he did it? For the habit. You know, for the habit. So, you know, he's a bad man. But when he converts to Buddhism, he gets better. You know, he's not quite so bad anymore. You know, because he's not suffering, unhappy. You know, so he's doesn't feel the need to use lightsabers and that stuff. So his life becomes a whole lot better. Well, so what Ahsoka does is he gets real fired up like everybody who is a convert. One of the wonderful things about converts is converts want to do what? They want to convert. They want to convert everything. And that makes sense. Because if I find a detergent that I really like, what am I going to do? I'm going to tell you about it. If I find a doctor I really like, I'm going to tell you about it, right? You know, so, you know, if I'm dating a woman that I really like, I'm going to, no, maybe not. But I'm going to want you to use my detergent, right? All right, so that's what Ahsoka does. And he's got a real advantage because right here in India, there is a trade route that passes right like this. And that, in fact, the Chinese are even talking about their new policy, their new effort to dominate the world, which fortunately I will probably be dead before they do it, but it's coming. They call that the new Silk Road. And so you have the Silk Road that goes right here. Now, before people were sailing around Africa to get the stuff you wanted from, particularly spices and silks and stuff, from the east, you know, and chow mein. I'll tell you, this delivery was bad, you know, back then. Because you call them and say, I have one portion of egg foo young, and then it's going to be like 4 years later, you know. It's going to be cold. You know, among other things, it's pretty bad. So they had to come up with something bad. The Silk Road is right. And one of the things that you could do with the Silk Road is not only do products travel on these trade routes, but people and ideas. And that's what ends up happening. These Buddhist ideas end up traveling down right across the Silk Road, which means a lot of the ideas are being brought. Now, doesn't have an enormous amount of impact in the Middle East, and I think it's because of the radically different concept of God. I mean, this is different than anything they've heard, you know, and it's easy to reject when it is so radically different than what you're used to, but it does have an incredible impact to these in China. And we'll talk about Eastern religions in a couple of weeks, the Chinese religion. But it has an amazing impact in China and Japan and Southeast Asia. And even in Ceylon, in Sri Lanka, you know, Buddhism ends up traveling well. It doesn't take root, though, in India at all. You know, but Buddhism ends up spreading primarily because of this guy, Ahsoka, who has a lot of money, and if you want to suck up to Ahsoka, you became a Buddhist, sure. You know. Gosh, when I interviewed years ago at this little town, and this was when I got out of seminary, this was 30 years ago. I interviewed in a church called Jewel Ridge. Jewel Ridge, it was in Virginia. I can't think of the county, it was near Richland, Tazewell County, out in western Virginia, way western Virginia, right near Tennessee. Jewel Ridge. And at Jewel Ridge, there was a Presbyterian church right in the middle. And all the houses were white, and they were all wood. It wasn't like a variety of houses. They were all the same style, all of them whitewashed, all of them wood, Presbyterian church right in the middle. And this is, of course, mining country. And I asked, I said, oh, this is really, really interesting. For one, it's kind of odd. It's like stepping into like a horror movie, you know, what's living in your house. You know, because they're all there. I was single, so I would have accepted Skeptic. That didn't seem so bad to me. Here were all the houses the same in this white church in the middle. And I asked, I remember the person showing me around. And why, what's going on here? Why does the town, look, and when you got out of town, houses were different, and, well, not houses, trailers. The trailers were a little different, why in this town did everything look the same? It's just one room. He said, oh, well, this is a company town. This is a company town. And so the company built, now the mine was gone. There was no mine. The mine was gone. Had played out, or it wasn't economic anymore. And this was back, in the 80s. I said, well, but it was a company town. Now people own the houses, but it's the same. And I said, well, okay, why is there a Presbyterian church? Because there weren't Methodists around, weren't Episcopalian, weren't. He said, well, that's easy. The president of the company was Presbyterian. And so that was the church. And if you lived in Jewel Ridge, you were Presbyterian. That's where you went to church. Because the president of the company was Presbyterian. Okay, so Ahsoka ends up having this big influence as it spreads a little bit. Hinduism today, though, is a whole lot broader. Where would we find Hinduism today?
In people's homes.
Okay, you'd find it in a lot of different places. I like that one picture, the one there, the Statue of Liberty, but she's standing in what? A lotus blossom. Now you're looking. For a minute there, I was a little disconcerted because I'm looking at the screen here, and y'all are looking past me, and I was thinking, why aren't they paying attention? They aren't even paying attention at all. But so yeah, that's okay. So you've got Buddhism all over the place, including, like you said, in the United States, even in West Virginia, which is amazing and exciting. If you look at demographics, areas where you have high Buddhist percentage of the population, where are Buddhists most concentrated? Okay, in the dark areas, right? So it's going to be in China. I'm not going to say where are Buddhists densest, because that's kind of infers that they aren't real bright. But okay, so when we're looking in China, East Asia, what's that?
Classic Asia.
Yeah, classic Asia. Interesting here. That's right, Sri Lanka, Ceylon is right here. Japan. Now, interesting, Japan is going to, when we talk about the beliefs, and we will talk about it next week, because I don't want to shortchange Buddhism is going to find, and we're going to see the same thing in China. Buddhism is going to fit well. The Buddhist philosophy is going to fit really well with other religious beliefs. Because we're going to see next week, for Buddhists, God is, when I say God is irrelevant, I mean God is irrelevant. So it's, in fact, if you're going to be a strict Buddhist, God means that God is not necessary. God is extraneous. Therefore, if you want to pack a God or a system of beliefs, then a theology to Buddhism, you can do that. Buddhism really doesn't have a theology. Hinduism does. Buddhism really doesn't. And so you can go into another area, like Japan, and you could be a Buddhist and a Shinto. You could be a Buddhist and a Shinto. Really easy. Or in China, my gosh, in China, that's even more dynamic. You can follow the teachings of Confucius. You can be into ancestor worship. You can also be a Taoist, with this struggle between good and evil. All of that, and be a practicing Buddhist. So all of that is taking place here. One of the things that I always find interesting in their little dots and other places, Buddhism at least exists in all over the world. You've got a little place of Buddhism there. Yeah, you got a little place of Buddhism. Now, does anybody have any idea what that little place is. And I'll tell you, if I had shown you a map here of Hinduism, that would have been highlighted, so would two countries next to it. Particularly one right there. Does anybody know what that is? It is, that little place there is France.
Where?
France.
Is France.
France.
Yeah,
It's over
France.
there.
What? What? France
You
is,
were pointing over there.
yeah, right here.
That's
France.
France, or is it a French group?
It
I would
is
also know.
French Guyana. And the reason I say France is the way France runs its foreign departments. French Guyana sends, we fought a revolution about taxation without representation. This is considered French. They send representatives to the assembly in Paris. So they elect representatives to go. So they are an integral part of France. The French would see, France has sometimes we could talk, well, not here though. They have a very dynamic view of nation. But that's French Guyana, and there's a sizable Buddhist population. There's a sizable Buddhist population, and the country next to them used to be the Dutch Guyana, now it's Suriname. How would you end up with so many Hindus and Guyana, with Jim Jones and his thing was right next to it. Okay, that was old British Guyana. Why would there be Hindus and Buddhists here? Because this is South America. You don't think of Buddhism with South America.
Slaves.
Well, a lot of them slaves. After slavery, one of the things they did, the British and the French and the Dutch brought in a lot of East Asians. A lot of East Asians were encouraged to migrate, to provide labor and intellectual capital to these three little countries. Two are independent republics. One is part of France, and part of France chooses to be part of France. It wants to be French. Okay. So anyway, that's in terms of demographic. The fact that Buddhism accommodates so well with other religions is the reason it becomes really important here. Okay. Any questions about this? Is a little history of Buddhism. I don't want to get into ideas because it'd be too long. Because Buddhist ideas are really exciting. I'm really excited about ideas. So we'll talk about that next. Any questions about history?
What did he find?
What did who find?
The prince.
What did the prince find?
Yeah.
Siddhartha Gautama?
Yeah.
He found the reason for suffering.
Yeah, I know.
And the reason, I'm going to tell you,
Okay.
because you could put it really simple. The reason for suffering, and in fact, do any of y'all suffer?
No.
Suffer? Unhappy at times? The reason for suffering, for unhappiness, is
Next one.
We're going to break for a commercial.
Nobody knows.
next week.
I
will
told you.
tell you, I'm going to tell you how to be happy all the time.
So
Inside, upside, downside, right side, left side.
That's impossible.
Yeah.
There you go.
Siddhartha Gautama.
Well, it's
All
another
right, let's have a word of prayer.
another week to suffer.
Another week of summer. But you've done it for years. What's one more week? That reminds me of an old Simpson episode when the Simpsons used to be funny. And what's that?
First 6 seasons.
Yeah, this was when I'll look at John because he knows. See, John and I know this nerd, which is really embarrassing. But when the episode when Homer screws up the Y2K, and he's in charge of handling it for the power plant. He's the Y2K coordinate. And of course, he doesn't do it. Everybody else in the world does it, and he does it. And because he doesn't do it, it spreads everywhere. And you know, the world is, you know, the world is going to end, and things are flowing up, and airplanes are crashing, and they. Now, I had a reason to start. I don't remember. It had to do with what you said about. It was good. It was really good, but I know what it was. It was what you said about you suffering another week, because they're going to go to another planet. They're going to shoot to another planet, and they've got this one rocket that is going to go to Mars, and they find that Mars, you can live on Mars, and this rocket is going to start humanity on. And they're going to take all the good people. They can't take everybody. They're taking all the good people, you know. And so Marge and Lisa and Homer and Bart are there in line, and Homer and Bart don't get to go. And so Lisa and Marge and the baby go up on this spaceship. But the Homer and Bart notice another spaceship about to take off, you know, and they say, we can't get on this one. And nobody's in line to go on this one. And so they get in and get the seat on this other spaceship. And they start looking around, and they notice, do you know what I'm talking about?
I remember.
Okay. They look around at the people sitting around them, and they notice people like Rosie O'Donnell. and what is it? The Allen were married to Roseanne Barr. What was his name? Jim Allen?
Arnold.
Yeah, okay. Arnold, and they noted Pauly Short. Short. He's there, and you know, Bart say these are not great people. And it's while the one is going to Mars to start the human race again, this one is going to fly into the sun. He's going to fly into the sun. And Bart is there, and Homer turns to him and says, well, you know, it looks like we're going to die, but at least we had a nice long life. And then he's telling it to his 10-year-old. You know, so if this is all together, you said one more week of suffering, man, you suffer. One more week is a drop in the bucket. You know, but you gotta come. Because you don't come next week.
You're recording your Simpson conversation. You're recording.
Your point being, Miranda, let's have a word of prayer. Lord God, thank you for guiding us through this. Help us to appreciate this different mindset, and help us to see Buddhists as more than fat people with their legs crossed. In your name we pray, amen.
That was rude.